Let me see. Go live now. Okay, if I click go live now, we're gonna go live, I think.
Let it rip, man.
Ready? Okay, so just like once it goes live, just rip it. Jay, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, hold on.
Give me the thumbs up, man. We're live? Oh, hello, everybody. This is Jake Stenziano, host of the Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast, here with my co-host, the multifamily mentor, the coach, the chef, father of six, and best-selling author, the G-Daddy, Gino Barbaro. Gino, how's it going?
Mr. Stenziano, this is the time to say commit and then figure it out, because this is the 5-year anniversary. We've been doing this for 5 years. We've got almost 2 million downloads to date on iTunes alone. So this has been an exciting journey for me. And it's just like everything else in life. You start something out and you think it's going to turn into something different, but it turns into something completely different and even better than your wildest expectations. So we've got a bunch of reasons, how the show's impacted us, why it's been beneficial to us, and, what we've been able to accomplish and how we've been able to deliver value to our listeners. So I'm excited to be on, really.
Here's the hilarious piece to it. Right now, we're going to Facebook Live. We've never gone Facebook Live via Zoom before. We may not even be Facebook Live right now. We think we are. Gino just hit some buttons. We were on a team huddle this morning, and someone brought up the fact that, you can go Facebook Live on Zoom now. You hit the more button and do this, that, and the other thing, and Gino was fumbling through it a minute ago. We may be live right now. We may not. But we're you know what we're doing? We're taking education times action, and we're equaling in our results. In the beginning, when we started the podcast, we had no clue what we were doing. We had no video. The audio quality was terrible, and we just committed. We committed. We said we're going to put content out because we're in the apartment game, and we're documenting our success as we go, and that's what it was all about, Gino.
For me, Jake, it was also a commitment to the partnership. When we started, I was heavily into working 60 hours a week. I had to figure out how to fit in a weekly show every Thursday. I had to read people's books. I was doing book reviews. I was trying to add as much value to the person coming on the show as I could. So it really, it was unbelievable. So for me, it was great. I loved it. It pushed me to become a better teacher. So remember, Jake, we always say learn, do, and teach. I was learning multifamily, and at the same time, me and you were doing it. We were scaling up our portfolio, and we were teaching it. So to become a better investor, the podcast really helped me out to become a much better investor. And I was really, really, more than anything, I was blown away by that. I was so excited about that, Jake.
But let's dive a little deeper. How has the show impacted your life?
For me, number one, I've met so many amazing people. To be able to spend an hour with Ken McElroy, to spend an hour and a half with T. Harv Eker, who's one of, I guess, my mentors, reading, his book, to spend an hour with, Tony Robbins' son, Jarek. The list goes on and on. Cameron Harold.
I love the Cameron Harold one. Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing.
Mac Benson, thanks a lot, bro.
So it's working.
It is working. My kids can see.
Shit.
I don't know. I gotta be careful with the language today.
Sorry. I'm already screwing up here.
So, I mean, it really has, and it's connected to me a lot of people. And for me, it's one of those discipline things that I know Tuesday morning, 9 a.m., Jake and Gino are going to be recording a podcast, and I have to be ready for it. I have to prepare for it, and it's got me into that mindset to have discipline. Now, from that one podcast, Jake, let me continue on. We have 4 shows now. I actually part of 3 weekly shows. We have the Multifamily Zone, we have the Movers and Shakers, and we have Wheelbarrow Profits. And a testament, we created a 4th one with Mikey T and with Will Coleman. They're doing the Rand CRE show. So from this one podcast, we've spawned 4 weekly shows where we're creating different kinds of content, whether it's for the family, whether it's students, taking down deals. All that has just been an amazing thing for me.
And it's just like a testament to how much multifamily is a team sport, because we've actually grown our vendor community from the podcast. We've had different people on. They say, "Hey, we do this," and it gives us an opportunity. It's like a forced meeting to get to know them a little bit, vet them, and then continue down the road. So I think the relationship aspect is huge. And again, we say it all the time: multifamily is a team sport. The G-Dad's typing right now.
Did you get my message, bro?
It ended?
It just ended right now. So we just went live. We just ended it, and that's what it's all about. Don't know if it worked. I saw my kids heard me, spouting a little bit. So
why did it end?
I have no idea, bro. That's what happens when you
But
start.
this is it. It's just like the beginning. We had bad audio quality. We had no video, and Facebook gave us 3 minutes.
And
Thank you, Zuckerberg.
And the funny thing, Jake, think about it. This is like when you put your first LOI in. Did you put it in right? Did you talk to the broker properly? Did you analyze your deal? Well, you know what?
Did you have an expiration date on it? Or are they going to let it sit forever?
You just got to let it rip. And then that's why for us, the education piece was huge, creating the Jake and Gino, where you have coaches that are going to allow you to help you out and say, hey, this is how you do it. So for us, that commitment was really huge. So meeting many great people is the first one. The second one is learning from them. You meet them, you network with them, you build your network, and all of a sudden you have somebody on there saying, hey, I use this service, or hey, you know what? I remember Cameron Harold telling us, why are you guys still using Skype? Use Zoom. So that pushed me to use Zoom.
That was it. That's right.
That was that one. It was just an amazing thing for us. We learned so much every week from our guests. I mean, the most recent one, the apartment rock star, Robert Martinez was on a couple of weeks ago. We recorded with him, just listening to him out creating a brand and how what we're doing is very similar to what he's doing, how it's working out, and just learning from other people in the industry. And I think the business leaders have impacted us more than anything else, reaffirming core values, reaffirming coaching our employees, reaffirming all the different platforms that we're using and all the different advice that they've given us. That's the second thing that's really been effective with me from the podcast, Jake.
Gino, I just had an epiphany. We actually created additional businesses from the podcast, if you think about it, because we are traditionally buy and hold investors. We take our own capital, we put it into deals, and we buy. We started, having syndicators on the show. We learned the syndication model through the podcast. We hooked up with Kim Taylor, our syndication attorney, and that business has grown. We also started RANCAP through the show. So it's amazing that when you put yourself out there, and to your point, you commit the things that can come from it. And all that led to us right there writing the Honeybee. Mm-hmm. Because if we wouldn't have had that vertical integration and those multiple streams of revenue, the Honeybee never shows up, because that's a huge piece of the Honeybee and why we wrote that book.
Mm-hmm. So to me, what I just piggyback off of what you just said, it's the mastermind aspect too, the mastermind element to it, right? When you're listening to others talk and you're getting ideas from them and you're asking them questions. One thing that I really don't like about TV and watching all those news reporters, when they ask a question, they pontificate and they continue to ask. It's like you have a guest on. Let's listen to your guest speak. And, we know that you're educated. We know you're smart. But what I love about our show is we ask questions and we just let it rip. We don't try to add our
drive a narrative, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I want to hear from them. They're the experts. Let them talk. And I love that about it. And that's the mastermind element of it, trying to attract as much knowledge and information from them and then sharing it with our community. And then obviously getting those emails from the students and from people saying, hey, I quit my job because of your podcast, or hey, I just closed this deal because of your podcast. Just from listening 1 hour a week. It's amazing what happens to people. And it also raises their level of energy. When you listen to a podcast you enjoy and there's nothing here to sell, and it's just total content and total value, you're locked in, you're ready to go, and you're like, well, let me go back and listen to the podcast they had with the inspector. What about the one they had with the 1031? What about the one they had with cost segregation? What about the one they had with the syndication attorney? It's basically a weekly education. And the funny thing is, I am really selfish because I'm learning. Jake and I basically learn how to syndicate a deal through podcasting all the syndicators out there and finding out which every single one they did. They all came on. They all had various different models. One had prefs. One was doing 70-30 split. One was just, not charging these fees. And we put that whole model together. We said, you know what? Let's go back and listen to these podcasts. And there was like about 15 of them from some amazing syndicators. And that's how we learn, by actually podcasting other people out there in this space.
Here's a classic example. We bought a property at foreclosure, literally at the courthouse steps, and there was a HUD component of it. So what did Gino do? He went out there and he found some HUD consultants and he brought them on the show, and we ended up working with the people. But it serves, that's what I'm saying, it's such a team sport, and it's forced networking week in and week out, and it brings tremendous value to the business every time we're on these things.
Let's continue with that narrative. I wanted some sales training, so I asked Jeffrey Gittimer if he could be on the show. And I have to be honest, a lot of these guests that I get them for Jake, because I know Jake, these are Jake's heroes, right?
Well, I grew up in sales, and I used to read Gittimer's books. I remember it was at the Poughkeepsie Barnes & Noble back in like 2002, and I picked up that book, and I was like, the little red book is selling, and then Gino gets the guy on the show a few years later. It was awesome.
What about G. Edward Griffin? We got him on also. That was your hero. Oren Claff we've had on and talking about sales. So I wanted to learn sales from people who are doing sales. So you try to get these high-level entertainers on, these people who really know their space. Now, the downside to that is
it's going to be called the Selfish Podcast.
But you know what? What's great about it is I have to read their books. I have to do a book review on their books. It's about, on average, whether I'm interviewing a Dean Graziosi, or I'm interviewing a Cameron Herold, or I'm interviewing a Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets, I need to consume their book. Then I need to write a book review. So it could take 4 to 5 hours just to put on a 1 hour show.
And they appreciate it too, that you've done the homework on the front end. It's like, because I think most times they'll go on shows and then people, have their kind of scripted questions, but when they actually know that you put the time into it, man, they're so appreciative. It's amazing, right?
Another thing, they're a lot of fun, aren't they, Jake?
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, probably the best part of our day, other than getting up, kissing my kids, coming in here and spending an hour with you on a podcast and learning the topic and interviewing somebody who's really cool on the other end and learning from them and sharing that story, packaging it up. And that's a really, amazing part of Jake and Gino and the podcast, is just being able to have fun. I had troubles with the restaurant at times because I wasn't having fun at work. And that's one of the reasons why I left the restaurant business, because I didn't want to go to work and not at least enjoy parts of my job, right? I was enjoying it less and less. And I didn't want my kids to see work as just being hard, right? I wanted it to be hard work, but I wanted it to also be enjoyable and rewarding at the same time. And not that the restaurant wasn't, because we're feeding families and all, but it was just got to be a drudgery after a while. And I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But with the podcast, with investing, you're pivoting it, and you might have tough days with property management. You may have tough days with the education piece. You may have tough days with investors. We all do. But being able to jump on the podcast to clear your thoughts and to share the story and to have a little bit of fun, it's really super rewarding for me.
And it aligns with the core values. I think the podcast is all about having a growth mindset, because every time we come on, we're exposed to different ideas that we may have not thought of or we may have not been aware of. And it's an opportunity to take those ideas and implement those into the business. Mm-hmm. From the podcast, we started the education company. And then from that education company, we have all these boot camps that we do where we go on sites, we do property tours. On those property tours, we don't always do them on our properties. We'll go on our friends' properties. And then we learn from being on those properties. That's one of the most rewarding things, because I'm heading up the day-to-day of the property management. When I see the way someone's maybe handling something from a maintenance aspect or a leasing aspect, we're able to. So look, we don't know everything. It's constant improvements. We're always seeking excellence, and we were able to pick those things up from our peers and our counterparts, and vice versa. So it's a great way to share information. It's a huge pie. It's not this like zero-sum game where he's winning and I'm losing, and we can all grow together. There's a huge pie out there, and that podcast I really think taught me that, because Gino knows I get extremely competitive at times. But it's not this thing where it's got to be he's winning and I'm losing, or vice versa. We can all be winning in this game.
So Jake, don't you think also we've done 3 live events? From those 3 live events, we've been able to get a lot of the guests from the live events from doing the podcast, right? Mm-hmm. Interviewing, building rapport with them, finding some commonality, seeing how much value they've been able to provide. So being able to get all those speakers at our live events, probably over 100 speakers, you would say over the 3 different live events, was just an amazing thing for me, and being able to talk to them beforehand and sharing their story, and then saying, hey, by the way, Jake would do this to me. We'd have like 30 people in an event. And he's like, you want to speak with us? You want to speak with us? I'm like, Jake, we got no more room. So we're just cutting down time, but it's fun because every time you get on these calls, they don't know what to expect. They see a pizza guy and a drug rep. What do these guys know? But we do the business. We're pretty educated on it. And one other thing is, it got me out of my comfort zone, because I hate speaking in front of people. I hate doing these videos, but it's forced me to become better. It's forced me to practice my craft and to get better at it. And that's one of the other benefits that we do, is that when you have to do it, and if you can't do a podcast by yourself, find a partner out there. Find somebody that you can partner with. So when the podcast is Wednesday at 3:00 in the afternoon, if you don't show up, you're letting your partner down. So you will show up at Wednesday or whenever you have it scheduled. And that's what, for us, it's been great, because we're the 1-2 punch. We bring something different, each of us, to the podcast, but we're also going to show up. Like this morning, we got off a huddle and we're like, okay, 5 minutes. We need to jump on this podcast at 9:05. And guess what? We're both on the podcast at 9:05.
And we let the Facebook Live rip. It's not there anymore, but we let it rip. And the other cool thing is, it's the same thing with the live events. The only thing is the podcast came before we started doing live events, but we didn't know what the hell we were doing with the live event. We talked to some lady at the Hilton, and we figured it out, and then we realized, okay, we don't know, we're dumb shits, and we don't know what we're doing with this, so we had to get some help with it. But that's how it goes.
That was an amazing experience because we had no idea what we were doing. It was just like, I don't know how 175 people showed up. I don't know how we got through it. We didn't know how to speak in front of people. But the amazing thing was, we just had fun and we just figured it out. And we didn't worry about our egos looking dumb or looking, because one of our coaches told me, everyone's out there winging it. Everyone thinks everyone else has it figured out. Nobody has it figured out. Joe Rogan signed that $100 million deal for his podcast this week to go on Spotify, I think. You know how many years he's been honing his craft and how long he's been doing it and how excellent. He didn't start out as Joe Rogan, $100 million. He started out just like Jake and Gino.
A lot of stand-up reps, right?
That's right. And working on it. And I think there's a passion to it. I think he really enjoys it, obviously. But he's put in countless hours to hone his craft.
Oh, man. Gino.
For us.
3 other shows, too.
Yes. For us, it's the brand, right? I mean, Everyone out there, it's time to everybody out there looking at yourself and saying that you are a brand. So for us, it was Wheelbarrow Profits was the brand, but it's Jake and Gino. And then from there, we like this medium so much that we created other podcasts. We created the Multifamily Zone podcast because there's a lot of the students in the Jake and Gino community who are family. And, running a business is very similar to running a family. You have to have the discipline. You have to be able to ask empowering questions. You have to really be able to be the leader, whether you're the father or you're the mother. There's different roles for us. So, we started a podcast because a lot of spouses out there are saying, hey, how do you do this? How do you have 6 kids? How do you homeschool? How do you, break up the responsibilities between business and family? And we bring on some couples who have done really good, but every week for us it's a little bit different. And I enjoy doing the podcast with my wife because there's a lot of people out there that it's really all about communication. And for us, starting that podcast was really another selfish endeavor because I'm able to work with my wife every week. I'm able to do a podcast with her. I'm able to talk about the business with her. I'm able to share an important part of my life with her because, talking about Jake and Gino is one thing, but preparing for a podcast is a total another thing. And having her come down to the boot camps and give lectures to the students is another thing. So if I had never started the Jake and Gino podcast, the Wheelbarrow Profits podcast, I never would have probably been able to continue along and create these other podcasts that we have.
Yeah, and it really has become a multifamily buffet because we have a large team and different people on the team have different strengths. I enjoy business coaches and systems and the general business type stuff. That's why Gino and I do the Wheelbarrow Profits podcast together. Gino's got 6 kids and his wife's very passionate about, integrating the family and the business. So that's where you have the multifamily zone. We got Mike Taravella and Will on the, the investment side and the banking side. And that's what those guys are passionate about day in and day out. So it gives everybody a voice and everyone a medium to interact with our company on a various level. If you're more on the syndication side, that's where the CRE show is. If you want to find ways to incorporate the family into the business, that's what the multifamily zone is for. So it's just a great buffet where people can kind of go in and they do the Burger King and have it their way. So that's one of the cool things, and we enjoy it. It's fun. It's fun getting on the shows, and I think that's been a nice little cherry on top for us.
And there's a few other things. When you create the brand, you're able to promote your own stuff if you'd like. If you want to promote a live event you're having, if you want to promote a book you're selling, if you want to promote a friend that you have on there. And isn't it cool, Jake, that I've got people down here in the real estate space down here in St. Augustine that are like, I listen to your podcast all the time. So don't you think it builds credibility with those people that are in the real estate space? If you're speaking to a broker, invite the broker on your podcast and say, I'd love to have you on. Let's have a conversation. That is a rapport builder right there. And that's also credibility for you because you're positioning yourself like Napoleon Hill. Think of yourself as Napoleon Hill. You may not have deals. You may not have the credibility. Neither did Napoleon Hill when he started writing Think and Grow Rich. He was just positioning himself and interviewing others who were wealthy, whether it was Schwab, whether it was Edison, whether it was Carnegie, all these people he was interviewing and learning from them and also positioning himself. So when people thought of Napoleon Hill, they said, wow, he must be rich or he must have that credibility because he's talking to others. So that podcast that you're going to create out there, everyone out there, it's going to be going to give you the credibility boost on top of everything else that we've talked about. Can you imagine when you want to speak to a banker or a broker, you're like, hey, come on my show.
Just
I
took the
love
words
to
right out of my mouth. It doesn't have to be investment capital. So I think so many people look at podcasts because there's, I'm going to get investors. But that may not be your thing. You may just be buying deals like Gino and I did. So if you put it in your email signature, if you put your podcast in your email signature, you may be able to send that to a banker. You may be able to send it to a property management company or a broker, and that's going to lend credibility, because one of the biggest hurdles when you get into multifamily space, when you get into this world, is the lack of credibility. That's why it took us almost 2 years to get that first deal. If we had a number one podcast prior to that, I think it would have accelerated all of our investment deals from that point.
So for Jake, I think one of the last things it did, I think it gave us the confidence to take action. Because if I didn't even know what a podcast was when we started 5 years ago, right? I really had no idea. So I said to myself,
"That's true."
No, that is.
No, Gino had no clue what a podcast was.
Never heard it. I don't even listen to podcasts.
No, but like some people think like you just say some things. That is 100% the truth.
So we started. I'm like, if I can start a podcast and I can hit the button, record, and we can go through one and get it edited and get it uploaded, if I can do that, then everything else, we can accomplish everything else. There's nothing that's going to stop you by doing that. And don't get caught in the minutia, right? Well, who's going to edit it? How are you going to sound? Because like Jake, I don't know if Jake mentioned this, but our first few ones weren't pretty good. If you go back and listen to
they're terrible.
It wasn't. We didn't have any kind of interview style. I think the content has always been very good. To be honest with you, we had a broker on. We had
because we do it though.
Guy. Yeah, but. I mean, like, it wasn't like flashy, it wasn't salesy, it wasn't slick. It was just two of us getting on, and they were super long, but at least we got out there, and it doesn't matter how they sounded. They're there in the ether forever. So
put yourself out there.
It'll always remind us of where we came from, and it always reminds me that every week I'm trying to get better and better and better at it.
Constant improvement. All right, gang, let's take a quick timeout to hear from our sponsor.
At Rand Capital, we're focused on providing the best financing option for each deal and every client. Our personalized service, along with our blue-collar work ethic, will give you the peace of mind to know that we will take the stress out of the financing process so that you can focus on other aspects of your business. For more information and to find out how Rand Capital can help you find the best loan for your deal, visit randcapllc.com to start the conversation.
All right, Gina, we're back. I want to hear from you. What was your favorite show, and how did it impact you?
So I have a couple of favorite shows, believe it or not. I think Chris Voss being on there, I think has probably made us the most money, I think, out of all of them, right? Because it's such actionable content. And the accusation audit, our students have learned from it. I've got our coaches using his content, and it was amazing because he goes on, and his book is amazing, and his interview styling is great. He's got great stories.
How can we work together to get to the mutual result, the mutual benefit? What can we do to work together?
We got $100,000 credit. I mean, like I remember Jake is driving.
I thought it was 2.
It was. Yeah, you're right, for the breakers. So picture this, everyone.
Chris Voss made us $200,000 from the podcast.
That's the monetary benefits, where even if you're not monetizing on your podcast, there are so many other different kinds of benefits. Jake is driving up to Kentucky. I'm like, Jake, I scheduled this podcast a month ago. I can't really reschedule with him. He takes it in the hotel. I see the back of the hotel room. He's in the hotel room.
Got the mic with me and everything.
And as he's talking, we're going through the due diligence period on this deal. And it's like a light bulb went off. And we're asking him selfishly, but it's all out there for everyone to listen to. What do you do with this? And he's like, this is what you know. I'm like, wow, that was amazing. And I think my other favorite one is we just did a few with Oren Claff, 2 of them. The Pitch Anything.
Oren's a beast.
Flip the Script. So I mean, they're a little bit over the top. They're amazing, but the content is there. If you listen to it, this is how you learn how to sell and to raise capital. And I like the podcasts that are really actionable. That's why ours may go a little bit longer than the average 25 or 30 minutes. We don't care of how being sounding slick and all. If Oren is on his rant and he's saying F this and this is how you do it, I'm not going to cut him off. I want him to continue his thought and continue to add value, because that's what they're there for. They're there really to teach us. And, within 30 minutes, you can't do that much than a 30-minute podcast. I'm sorry. You may feel like, I got a lot of content, but you got Chris Voss on. You have Oren Claff on. They're on for an hour giving tons of content. I mean, that hour, you could take you months to learn what they're telling you in an hour. And Orenclaff for me was a complete shift on how to raise capital, as far as brain, as far as neuroscience, as far as doing time frames, as far as posturing up, and as far as creating rapport. It was an amazing podcast. So I love the ones that have a lot of actual content on, you know.
I think two of the ones I had the most fun with was T. Harv Eker and
Yes.
Robert Kiyosaki.
Yes.
And the reason I like those so much is because they just started off a little rocky and weird, and by the end of it, we were like fist bumping and having brewskis at the pub kind of thing, and just like everyone was like, "Oh, we're all on the same page on this shit." So it was just, you know, those were some of the fun ones that were just a little awkward in the beginning, then the guys warmed up and they ended up crushing it. So that was
I love that you mentioned.
experiences. Yeah,
I love that you mentioned T. Harv Eker, because he's the one, and everyone out there, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. He has a lot of content out there, but that one book, if you're feeling sorry for yourself or you're feeling doubt, read the book. He's really annoying. Go listen to that podcast that we had with him. It was over an hour long. I'm amazed because he had just gotten off a coaching call with 1,000 students. His hair was all jacked up. You could see he was in Hawaii. He was just chilling out. He's like, okay, what do I got to do now? And honestly, everybody, it took me 30 emails to get him on. It took me months and months and months to get him on and commit, figure it out. I have reminders in my calendar, meeting with his assistants. And for me, what I loved about that is that he was a mentor of mine. He really got me out of my, oh, woe was me, and all the financial thermostat, and, oh, you know, punch me in my gut. Your fruits are in your roots. All of that really started sinking in. And then to be able to get him on and be able to share his story and give action items, it was an awesome experience.
100% responsible for your results, right?
Yep, it was awesome.
How do you think we've become better investors from the show?
For us, we learn something and we're not afraid to implement it, whether it's using Appfolio.
That's the
right?
truth.
Yeah, right. You know, somebody tells us, "Hey, use this." Whether it's CrowdStreet, I mean, the list can go on and on. All the vendors, whether it's Tennant Turner, all the vendors that we're utilizing right now, it's like they'll say something and we'll try it right away, because I think people are in the space, and then you can actually build rapport with them. Whether it's a syndication attorney, Kim Taylor, we've had her on, and she's amazing. So learning from her on the podcast and then saying, okay, let's do this. I think also the different types of management strategies, when you're talking to syndicators out there, what are they doing in the space? You know, what's going on in the marketplace? What do things cost? You know, I think the biggest thing is the negotiation piece. We're not taught a lot of things in school. We're not taught how to negotiate properly. We're not taught how to build rapport properly. We're not taught the sales process properly. And no one's ever taught.
I think sales in school is like dirty. Like you don't even talk about it.
Yeah, and that's what an entrepreneur needs. And I think what I've learned as far as the management strategies is really sales, but sales about your employees also. You have to pitch the vision to your employees. You have to pitch the vision to a broker. Those strategies, I think we've really excelled at learning from all the different people.
Well, it's the business systems, the EOS, the scaling up people that we've had on, because, you know, we said it in the beginning of the show, education times action will equal your results, meaning it will get you into the multifamily space. It'll get a deal done. But then it's people, systems, and culture, and that's where we've gotten so much value from the scaling up coaches and EOS, because, again, it was something that wasn't taught. I got an MBA, and this shit wasn't taught when I was getting an MBA, okay? And this is what it really comes down to. Also, I think it's that mastermind effect where we were being very stubborn back when the market started to turn. We were buying 8 caps, and then they started going down to 7 caps, and I'm digging my heels in and like demanding, like, no, I want it for this price, and it wasn't happening. And if we wouldn't have kind of opened up, we would have lost some really great deals because we were being like ruthlessly disciplined, but it was also to our detriment. Where we went almost 2 years back in 2016 before we bought anything else, and then we started knocking out some phenomenal deals. Might have been a 6.5 cap or whatever, but shit, I mean, they've been tremendous. You know.
And that's an excellent point, and that's because we're listening to different people and finding out what's going on in the market. And then, you know, from that perspective, we actually were able to create the Jake and Gino education program through the podcast. From going to events, from being able to hire coaches, from being able to, you know, to get our name out there and saying, hey, we have got a podcast. You want to come work with us? So we were able to scale it out from there. And that, I think, ultimately gave us the credibility and ultimately learning all the stuff, whether it's the market cycles, whether it's the different debt components, and creating the buy right, the manage right, the finance right. I really think it was able to grow and flourish through the podcast, because we've had all different types of people on, whether they're managing their properties, whether they're talking about the buy aspect of Jake said, or they're talking about the finance aspect. Whether it's a mortgage broker or whether it is as Jake was talking about, a syndicator also. Those are all the different things that we've learned as far as the education from the podcast.
Well, it was a platform to get the message out because, look, people have different investment views. I've never heard anyone challenge our three-legged stool, meaning buy right, manage right, and finance right. And that's we learned that through doing. Mm-hmm. And it was just an epiphany that we had. Look, multifamily is this. It's buying right, managing right, and financing. That's what it comes down to. Focus on those buckets, become excellent at each one, and you're going to have a great chance for your investment to do very well. Mm-hmm. So it's just, there's a lot of truth to the framework,
So you had said there's 3 things that you learned on the podcast. Those 3 things that you wanted to end with. What were they? Yep.
It was a selfishly free and wonderful education, forced networking, and then that discipline, because look, in business, you need to show up. You need to show up every week. So we're forced, Gino and I, to get on every week, and we get the education and we get the networking through that discipline. So it's the free education, the forced networking, and the discipline to show up every week. And that's been a really great way to get ourselves out there. Because look, I can, many times not want to go to the event or not want to do this, and it forces me to put myself out there. And it's that exposure and that showing up that's been tremendous.
So Jake, I want to give some tips to any listener out there that hopefully we've inspired them to either take their podcast to the next level or to start a podcast. I think the first tip you have to do is you have to commit. You have to say to yourself, I'm going to do this. And if you can't do it by yourself, find a compadre, find a partner to do it with. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is get clarity on why you want to start a podcast. We've given you a lot of selfish reasons why we've done it. We never really thought about why we started it.
We're not monetizing this show, keep in mind. This is not something we do for like Joe Rogan to get ads on it. This is a straight networking 101 here.
Yeah. For us, should we have started it for investors? Should we have started it to monetize? Should we have started it to, become better investors? We didn't have a plan. We just started it. I want you all out there to get clarity on why. If you want to monetize it and start building up your base, great. If you want to start getting more accredited investors, great. Just have an idea of why. It's like when you write a book. You need to have a singular message of what this book is going to be about. And I think the same thing in the podcast. What are you aiming to get out of your podcast? And that can pivot, that can change. Because for us, it's changed a couple of times. We were thinking of monetizing it, but monetizing it is in the short term. Now that we might want to start a fund, all of a sudden our efforts may be to start advertising for the fund going forward. It can shift. But when you start out. I think, Jake, the next thing is pick a niche. For us, we stayed in our lane of multifamily. We taught multifamily, and now we're branching off into general business, because I think general business and scaling goes hand in hand with multifamily. That's one thing that we've really learned ultimately. We thought multifamily is just investing and all, but it's really all about business. So we've been able to scale, use the multifamily, and then all of a sudden bring in a ton of business experts onto the podcast. The next one, let me give just one more. Once you've done that, just go out there and start figuring out what equipment you need, whether it's a microphone, what platform you're going to use, where you want to host it, who's going to help you editing it. All that stuff is not hard to figure out. You can just go and you can start Googling all that stuff. But what I'd like to do is I'd like you to get a few shows in the hopper. Just practice 30 minutes and don't pressure yourself, and be prepared for every show. I have notes for every single show. And Jake and I blast through this stuff. We rarely do edits, right? We just blast through it. And the accountability piece of having a partner there takes a lot of pressure off, because when I'm at a loss for words, he's there for me, and vice versa. So that next step is really important. Get a few recorded, start thinking about what you want your podcast, and just start reaching out to people and making those connections and saying, hey, would you like to come on? 95% of the people will say yes to you, because it's just something different, something exciting, and they want to get their message out there. And all of a sudden they're on your podcast, and it's like, hey, I was on Jake and Gino's podcast. Listen to the podcast. So it gives them the credibility, and ultimately it's just a lot of fun. You're going to have fun with people, and you're going to enjoy yourselves.
Yeah, and a multifamily tip that has been resonating with me recently, in the last 10 years that Gino and I have been working together, it's all about time. And many people look at multifamily, and I say this all, they see this pie in the sky. Oh, it's not for me. I can do a duplex. I can do a single family. Look, I was working in corporate. Gino was working at the restaurant. You just need to get started with this, and you're going to realize you're going to do a 2-unit, a 4-unit. You can keep leveling up. It's not that much harder. It actually gets easier because you're going to take people with you, and people are going to be working with you. And then what you're going to see is get that fixed rate financing in place. And over time, you're going to start to see a spread. You're going to start to see, if you're managing right, you're going to start to see your assets performing. And it's all about time. The longer you hold these things for, the better they start performing if you're managing right. And different opportunities that you won't ever expect will come to you, whether it be through a refi or, maybe it's, some new people joining your team and putting new systems in place. But time is the biggest thing here. It's continuing to take action every day and letting things play out over time. Don't get impatient. So many people get online and see this jerk and that guy closed 150 units and 200 units, and then they start feeling down on themselves. And I think you just need to show up every day and get a little bit better and keep growing and adding to your portfolio and understand why you're in it. If you just are in it to create financial freedom for you and your family, don't get caught up in all this other BS. Mm-hmm. Stick to the objective, stay in your lane, and keep showing up every day, and don't deviate. Because people ask, why have you guys been successful? Because we stay in our lane. We have a singular focus, which is multifamily. We have similar goals, and we're just trying to add good deals to the portfolio day in and day out. So I think that's extremely important. And then what that results in for us, because we have similar goals, is it allows us to leave a legacy and a very secure life of abundance for our families. Mm-hmm. And that's what it comes down to, folks. For us. That's what's important, and that's what we're doing here every day.
Jake, I think one other tip that I like to give all the listeners out there about a podcast, what we had learned early on is to be consistent. Our show airs every Thursday, and we try to record every Tuesday. And we had to do that because we were working W-2 jobs. So we tried to keep it consistent. Now, when you start podcasting people who are much higher level than we are, we need to conform to their schedules. So I was doing podcasts Thursday at 10 o'clock, Thursday at 4 o'clock recording, but I would go with whatever time they shared with me. What I would say to you is, do you want to do a daily show? Could be a daily 10-minute podcast, right? It could be a bi-weekly show. It could be a weekly show. Just make it consistent. And there's no reason why you can't pivot once you start, but make sure that if you decide to air your show, make sure a show airs every day or whenever day you're saying, whether it's Wednesday morning, my show airs every week. That is, I think, one thing that's led to our consistency and our ability to grow the podcast and to grow our tribe, because they know on Thursdays, Wheelbarrow Profits is coming out every Thursday. So, and they have a different show every single week. That is very important, Jake.
I agree. Man, it's been fun. We'll keep working on this Facebook Live thing. We'll get it.
One other thing, anybody out there who wants to leave a 5-star review on the podcast, leave the 5-star review, get out a screen grab, and I will send you out a free signed copy of the Honeybee. Just email it to gino@jakeandgino.com, and I will send you out a free signed copy of the Honeybee to the mail. So we're looking for more reviews.
He's no longer the G-Dad. He's the G-Giver.
That's one thing Jake told me. Give away the farm, bro. The farm is getting bigger, so we can give away more of it. But seriously, we were trying to get the message out to as many people as possible. We want to empower people. That's one thing that it started with. It started with multifamily, and now it's transpired down to the Wheelbarrow Profits. We're doing Youth Academy, so we're trying to grow the tribe. We're trying to empower people to become better at financial intelligence, because we're not being taught these skills. We're not being taught how to buy properties. We're not being taught how to invest. And I think it's really important to get that message out there. So anybody out there, gino@jakeandgino.com, send me that screen grab and send me that review, and I will send that book out to you.
Awesome. Good stuff, Gino. Thanks, man.
Stenziano, thank you. Take care, everybody.